Welcome to DBSync's What Our Customers Are Saying About Us segment, talking about data integration and the challenges that our customers have brought us to solve. For those joining us for the first time today, DBSync is one of the leading integration and replication providers, and we've worked with mid to enterprise level companies for over a decade now. Our motto in a nutshell is, if there's an open database, an open API and a database, we can integrate. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Julian Rose, who is the CEO of the Flute Company of New York. The Flute Company of New York is the world's largest specialty shop and basically specializes in all things flute. So if you need an instrument or you need expert repair, they've got you covered. Julian first joined us about 6 months ago or so and had one of the typical challenges we look for, obviously integrating systems, but actually needed 3 connectors. So we always like those challenges. We feel strong about them, but we always need a chance to prove ourselves and hopefully, Julian, make your life a little bit easier. So we'll hear about that in a moment, but I just wanted to first welcome you, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. I'll just say for the record, it's Flute Center of New York.
Oh, Flute Center. I apologize. Flute Center. God, see what happens when you memorize things? Flute Center of New York. So, Julian, like I mentioned, you've been with us about 6 months. And like I said, you've had some challenges we've certainly faced before, but give us a little bit more detail about specifically what you were dealing with and what made you choose DBSync in the first place.
Yeah, as I was looking at our company overall, the last couple of years have just brought us, thankfully, really record growth. And we had been looking to technology to solve a lot of problems generally. And one of those things that we decided we wanted to do was upgrade our CRM. We just didn't have a CRM previously. So we contacted Salesforce and we decided to build a custom Salesforce environment. And we just knew that it wouldn't really work if it wasn't connected to our ERP. And
Sure.
so, especially because we have an extremely complicated inventory selling high-end flutes and student flutes too, but flutes themselves are just extremely complicated. We're not, we have thousands of different SKUs, and every one of our clients is very picky. So we can't, sacrifice on insight into our inventory in any given time for our sales rep. So we had to figure out a way to have our ERP and our CRM talk to each other on a regular basis. And our Salesforce integration team did some research, and they actually were the ones who recommended DBSync, mainly because of the kind of position in the industry. It came highly recommended. I think that the company we hired had used you before with a different company.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had a lot of kind of, I think you said not challenges that you had seen before, but for instance, something that's not a custom, easy, out-of-the-box feature is serial numbers, which are extremely important for us. And we spent better part of a month or two just focusing on how to solve for serial numbers across and QuickBooks as well, but Salesforce doesn't. So DBSync had to write that code for us and solve that problem. But it's been 6 months, and the QuickBooks to Salesforce integration now seems like it's it's up and running for 6 months now, almost about 5 months since June. And now we're working on our Shopify to Salesforce, and as a byproduct Shopify into QuickBooks, which we launched our Shopify store about 6, maybe 7 years ago, something like that. Yeah. And believe it or not, we've been in business for 40 years, but for the last 7 years, we had a shopping cart with a website with a shopping cart, which was actually new for us. We didn't have it before 2013. And since then, we have been manually putting all customer data from Shopify into QuickBooks. Lots of copy. Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, and I'm sure that if there's anybody out there that's coming at this from the perspective of a decision maker status, at some point you start doing something, but you convince yourself that you're just too small for a certain solution. And at some point you begin to realize, like, some solutions are actually designed for smaller companies. It's, if we were a lot bigger, then we could probably afford, I don't know, however many duplicative payrolls or wasted dollars in terms of data entry people or whatnot. But precisely because we're so small, it's a reason to, I just think about the number of hourly wages I've paid just for copying and pasting from Shopify into QuickBooks, and vice versa, and all sorts of things like that. So, I think at some point you think that it's going to be really expensive to do something like that. And I was actually, it's not cheap, it's not like $100 or anything, but for the amount of money that you're spending, the total integration, everything all combined was a fraction of one payroll cycle for us, so, it's working so far, and I have every expectation that it can scale with us as we continue to grow too.
We certainly plan to. Now, let me ask you this. Did you do a little shopping around? I know you said that Salesforce had recommended us, or you're working with it recommended. Did you look at our formidable competitors and say, something about DBSync really stands out? Or did you just trust the word of mouth or a reputation and just go with us for that reason?
Well, we looked at, I think, 3 different companies. This would have been back in April or late March.
Yeah.
And the pricing for DBSync was competitive. And then I'm the kind of person that, sets up phone or video interviews. And if things go well, I tend to like to give people shots, right? So, but I forgot who the initial consultation was with. I don't think it was with the team that we eventually got assigned, but the initial consultation went really well with DBSync. So from my perspective, if they're an affordable option with great reviews and they kind of rub me the right way, then go for it.
Good. That's good to hear. I'm glad that our reputation preceded us in all the right ways. Now, you mentioned a little bit about improvements, and certainly mentioned, about the, not having to sort of pay your data entry experts, a little bit extra for all that manual entry. But what improvements have you seen beyond that? Or maybe I should ask, since you're only in it about half a year, what improvements do you anticipate seeing using DBSync?
Well, I'll start by saying, I don't know about you, but my experience with data entry is that they're usually not experts, and usually it's quite the opposite.
Wink, wink. Yes.
The data entry
application, yes, all those things that go with that. You're right.
The task you give to an intern, somebody who has very little skin in the game, right? So from that perspective, it tends to be a task that's error prone, but also tends to be a task that kind of needs to be done right. So from my perspective, we're still working on the Shopify integration, but hopefully it'll be up in the next month or so. It is a daily occurrence, weekly occurrence for me to find mistakes that my team is making. And keep in mind, my team is very highly trained. They are all professional flute players with multiple degrees in flute performance. They are really good at flutes, but they are not
not as good at the entry. Yes.
Yeah, they're not accountants, and they're so good at their job, right? But there are mistakes, there's just human error, and I think it would be the same no matter what you do, right? And so one of the things I'm looking forward to is just eliminating that user error altogether, and just having these I like to think of them as like magical little elf robots, that carry
putting everything
data
together behind the scenes. Yes,
right.
So it's just one button away.
It's just the little robots doing it for us, and it's just better. And frankly, my team would rather spend time on the phone with clients anyway. They don't want to be copying and pasting the from field to field. I just have this everybody's Apple key fading out. White print on the Apple key is all fading because they're Control C, Control V, Apple C over and over and over again. So that's the biggest thing. And then I think from there, it's also just a matter of scalability. One of the things as we grew as a company, our initial design as a company was to sell only instruments themselves, right? And so there's a certain kind of insulation you have from error by only doing that, because you limit the number of transactions that you interact in any given time period. So if you're only selling, if the average sale is $3,000 or something like that, then you only have 100 or 1,000 transactions a year. That's all fine. The number of errors is limited to the number of transactions you have. But in the last 2 years, we've opened up our inventory and started investing in small dollar purchases, add-ons, accessories, repairs, additional warranties, that kind of thing. Each one of those additional SKUs is potential for additional revenue. It's also the potential for more mistakes. So the number of transactions we're processing on our e-commerce platform has, I mean, the price, the value per transaction is obviously gone way down, but the number of transactions and therefore the number of revenue has gone way up. It's almost tripled in the last year because we're selling, $45 things that, if you're not in the market for a flute, right? You're not just in the market for a flute every year, and so we have great customer retention, but it often means that the 10-year-old who's just starting doesn't get her next flute till she's 14. And then when she's 14, she plays it on that for a couple of years. And then when she goes to college, she gets her next flute at 18 or 19 years old. So it could be years between when we'll see our customers, and we have excellent retention with the customers, but what do you do with the customers in between? And that was a problem we wanted to solve by offering bags and
Sure.
cleaning cloths and things like that. But that comes with the double-edged sword of thousands more transactions a year. So my hope is that this will iron all that out, and that all of it will just start kind of going on autopilot. No more errors, no more cleaning up of the errors, all that.
Yes, that is the plan, and we're in it to win it. Don't you worry. Now, I know, like, we talked a lot about, these improvements and stuff, and often we try and look for a dollar amount for ROI because, dollar amounts are sexy in the business world. But I know again, you're only into it for a little while. Are you looking to try and quantify that into a number? Like if you'd say, like, our goal is we will know we've been successful if we save this much money, or is it just more like you mentioned earlier, allowing your flute experts to be experts in that area and not having to do other, pieces of the work, reducing that amount of time, energy, resource? What would you say your numbers in that are?
I'm not sure I have like a final number, but we could do some back of the envelope math here. The people who are processing our Shopify orders will spend 15 to 20 minutes per order, right? And so if the average, if we're paying, and we only have well qualified and extremely accomplished flutists on payroll on our staff, so they make a decent amount in terms of salary. That 15 or 20 minutes is worth, on a weekly, the number of orders, the number of that they're processing times 15 minutes is I don't know, call it 20 hours a week, call it a half of a salary, right? That we're spending just bringing data over. Half of an annual salary is $35,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't think that would be an unreasonable estimate as far as what I expect to save on a given basis. And, I'll just say as an aside that $30,000 to $35,000 a year, what we're paying for this one integration is a tenth of that, maybe not even, something like that. So, and then we get to save that, in perpetuity every year, right?
Of course.
With essentially there's a recurring subscription fee, but it's nominal considering the saving. I don't know if that number's right. I haven't really thought about it in terms of a dollar value, but it doesn't feel wrong.
Yeah, and just more of an estimate, but just kind of getting a sense that, we're always trying to look at ROI in both the sense of, what have you gained both in the frustration, all the stuff that goes with the entry, the errors, et cetera, as well as in the end, we like to say we've reduced our, budget by this much. And wow, that's really, it's been fantastic for us. Now, say I'm a company coming to you, Julian, and I say, I'm in desperate need of integration. We've been doing things manually for a long time. What advice would you give them about DBSync? Like, what should they be looking out for? What are some of the keys to integration that you think DBSync might be able to help them resolve?
Well, I think the biggest thing is kind of wrapping your mind around a data mentality, right? Like, the idea is, I built our Shopify store 7 years ago, whenever it was. So I built it in a particular way that made sense for my end user. And I'm happy with how I built it, right? But I didn't build it from a data standpoint, right? The idea that one day I would have these little robots talking to, from QuickBooks to Salesforce, or from Salesforce to Shopify or whatever. And so from that perspective, it was, and I'm still working on this, kind of going back into Shopify and going back into QuickBooks and setting up the data in a way that makes sense for the databases to talk to each other, right? I can only imagine, like, if you're a small business and you want to use automation, if you don't already have, every single one of your products as, in a way that, one product over here aligns to one product over there, then that's something that you probably need to figure out. No amount of automation is going to help you figure that out, right? Or at least not without some heavy intervention. That was, I think, the biggest thing. It still is kind of a big thing because it really requires you to take a step back and plan. And sometimes it's not an easy thing just to fit that square peg in the round hole. So you kind of have to rebuild what you're doing, right? But at the same time, now that I can see the way that data talks to other data, I'm confident that not only is the solution we're working on now going to be really good, but that any future solutions that we want, I consider this kind of a foundation for scalability generally. I don't think there's a reason that our little company here, right, is growing, this year 16-20%, but it's been 30-40-50% every year for the last 5 or 6 years. And there's no reason that the longer we do this that we don't start to think of ourselves as a company that can be a major player in a much larger industry, and not just the largest niche store, but like a large store kind of regardless, like not a niche store, but in order to do that, you have to have systems in place that allow for that. The scalability factor has to be there. But so I feel like all of this is not just we're not just investing in the immediate ROI, which we are, right? And the that we're reducing errors now. We're investing in having data be able to talk to data, and computers be able to do all sorts of things. And that's only going to continue to snowball as we kind of set our sights higher.
Yeah. So it sounds like so far so good. We've seen some good things. We know we're still building and all that. And I appreciate all the sort of positive things that we're hearing, and again, hopefully reinforcing what we're trying to do in the first place. But I do know that all organizations have room for improvement. And again, I know you're a little newer to the game, but are there any, either whether it's product innovation or customer, excellent satisfaction type things that you might like to see about DBSync either now or in the near future?
I will say that the team that I've been assigned has been really good about doing everything in a really timely manner. I will say that sometimes I ask a question hoping for a more thorough answer than I get. I like to try and understand how the program's working and understand, how this particular rule impacts this outcome or this action, And sometimes it's kind of hard to pry that out of the people that I'm working with without asking 2 or 3 or 4 times to really get it. Sometimes I think that they almost feel content just giving me a yes or no answer, which, to be fair, some other clients might actually like. They might just appreciate a yes or no answer. For me, though,
not as techie behind the scenes, or if they, don't necessarily want to know how things work, just want them to work. Sometimes they just want to hear about the push one button solution. So you're right about that, but I will certainly take that feedback back, because we do know that there are folks that really do want to know the kind of inner workings and all that. So I'll just make sure to remind the team that to offer that information. And then if you're like, nope, I just want a yes or a no, then they can certainly go in that route. So I think that about wraps it all up for us today, Julian, unless you have anything else you'd like to add or any key pieces. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. We always appreciate not only hearing them, but it's very encouraging and gratifying to know that we can help customers like you, reach those solutions effectively, efficiently, and affordably. Those are certainly our goals. So I just tell you right now, we look forward to a long and fruitful relationship with the Flute Center of New York. So please stay with us and keep scaling. We love that. And, like I said, we've got over 30 connectors. So you name it, we're happy to add it. And for those of you out there as well, for looking for integration solutions, look no further. We've got you covered. So please just check out our reviews at the App Exchange and see why we're rated #1 in customer satisfaction. And don't delay. Connect with us today and we'll get your apps talking. Thank you. Bye-bye.